Well, how about that? Welcome, everybody. Salt City Hoops live postcast. Just getting it going now. We fired up the big guns today. It's Saturday night. We got ourselves a large beer today. So I'm happy to have you all in talking about the Jazz today. Let's see what's going on here. And I actually have the wrong ABV of this beer up. I said it was 9.3. It is extremely more than that. So we'll get that saved here. Welcome in. Salt City Hoops live postcast to talk about the Jazz again winning. They're 5-2. I was also in person for the game yesterday in Denver. I live in Denver, so I always like to make an effort to spend a little dollar on sitting right behind the bench, especially with a new coach, new team, learn these players, and have a good time with it. So let's get it going with our Salt City Hoops live postcast as I get this beer going. This is an Imperial Stout blend, barrel aged in what kind of barrels we got on this one? So this is a rum and bourbon barrels, and then conditioned on strawberries and white chocolate. So it's got just this great jammy, fun dessert vibe to it. And when you're barrel aging stuff, especially your Imperial Stouts, you end up in the 12% range, I should say. So I say it's 9.3% on the feed here, but it is a little higher than that. I'm going to fix that right now here. Place it? Yeah, it should be accurate now. There we go. Okay, so like I said, I was in person for the game yesterday, and we're going to have some things to talk about here. So that was a quite up and down game that we had today. Lots of big runs. I was watching it on delay, so I was really trying to catch up live as quickly as I could. And so I didn't take very good notes for this, but I was able to kind of keep tabs of some things that I was trying to look for in today's game. Namely, there were the two things I was most nervous about going into today. And I said if the Jazz don't do these two things, or if these two things go poorly for the Jazz, they just have no hope. One is turnovers. The Jazz have been throwing the ball around the gym this whole season. That's not a huge surprise considering the people that are on the roster trying to learn each other as like new teams and everything that goes along with that. However, you just can't turn the ball over like 20 times a game and expect to really win a game. The Grizzlies had 20 turnovers today. So on a related point, the Jazz had 19 turnovers. The Jazz had 7 turnovers in the first quarter. It was just absolutely brutal to watch. It was in every type of turnover you can imagine. Just trying a good pass that gets intercepted, or just doing a really poor basketball play, getting the ball stripped while you're standing still. Like those kinds of shit was happening all over the first quarter. The reason I was particularly nervous about it against the Grizzlies, yeah, turnovers are bad against any team. I get that. But against the Grizzlies, they're very good at forcing turnovers, and they're very good at effectuating what happens after a turnover. They're very good at scoring on the break. They're very good at scoring in transition on the semi-break, even if they don't get a full-on 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 fast break or what have you. They were going to do it. No Ja Morant for the Grizzlies, but that doesn't really affect what they can do defensively, right? Like Ja Morant is... he'll provide you those highlight defensive plays, and maybe he'll get a tough steal here and there, especially in crunch time. But he isn't what makes that defense go. That's really a Desmond Bane thing. That's a Steven Adams thing. That's a Dylan Brooks thing. And the entire roster is handsy, smart. They're very good at it. And Ja is no slouch, but replacing him with Tyus Jones, you're getting the same effect defensively, except for maybe a high-flying block or two, right, as far as like quality of defender. So if the Jazz were going to turn the ball over a lot, they were going to lose the game. Well, sure enough, they had 19 turnovers, which is one. If you're going to have over 15 turnovers, you're going to be. That's a very poor performance, holding on to the basketball, and that would have rated it in the 15th percentile, right? Luckily, Memphis also had their own 20 turnovers today. So Jazz got a little lucky as far as that evening out. The Jazz did play well defensively, forcing turnovers themselves. So it's not like, the Jazz were throwing the ball away very stupidly and that Memphis was playing great defensively, and then the Jazz were just getting lucky that Memphis was just playing poorly. I think the Jazz played very well, forcing them into tough situations and turnovers. The Jazz defense came back to life for spurts of this game. Unlike the first couple games where it was really a consistent, frenetic energy defensively, the Jazz didn't have that the entire night tonight. I think the back-to-back really helps. The first night was also on the road. But they kept it enough in spurts, and they were throwing a lot of bodies out there. I really like that Will Hardy was okay to ride guys who were playing well, who don't usually get rotation minutes. I'm speaking mainly of Nickeil Alexander-Walker in this instance, but we also had Ochai Agbaji, who, when he was playing well, he was getting the minutes he deserved, and that sort of thing. Leandro Balmaro, who played last night, did not touch the court today, in part because those guys were actually playing pretty well. Those guys played pretty well defensively as far as like that frenetic forcing turnover energy. The second thing is, and partly why Utah needs to play this frenetic defensive energy for a lot of the time, what I was looking for going into today was, all right, Memphis has got a litany of guys who absolutely will smoke a guy off with one dribble, and if they're not going to get all the way to the lane, they're really good at drawing a foul or shooting crisp mid-range jumpers. And sure enough, it was like what we were watching on Gobert defense all over again. But it was not the same defensive format whatsoever, but it was still the death by the same way. I mean, you had Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, and Dillon Brooks, all of them very consistently getting by their man, not really requiring a screen all the time to do so, getting to the mid-range and just draining mid-range after mid-range after mid-range jumper, or they're getting to the free throw line and drawing a couple fouls that way. Bane had 8 free throws today. Tyus Jones had one trip to the line, missed both of them luckily, and Dillon Brooks especially. He was 4-7 from 3, but he was 8 for 13 everywhere else, including a heavy dose of mid-range jumpers, right? So, and sure enough, looking at the conclusion of the stats, right? Memphis would have finished with their frequency. They would have been in the 98th percentile for frequency of their shot attempts that were mid-rangers. And then, okay, that's fine. We'll force them in the mid-range and stuff. But their accuracy on those mid-range jumpers is the 95th percentile. Right? So they're just absolutely nailing all of these mid-range jumpers and just absolutely killing the Jazz. So, and the Jazz were giving those shots wide open. It was very, very difficult to put up with. The Jazz came back by just playing hardball and shooting threes. The 3-point shooting really came alive today. It was really great to see. That the threes were hitting. Markkanen super fucking cold early as he has been from 3, but he ends up hitting a huge one at the end of the game. Finishes 2-9 from 3, and I totally underrated this guy's rebounding going into the season. I thought playing alongside Vanderbilt and Kelly Olynyk that he just would not have the minutes and the verve to get 9+ rebounds. Easily getting 8-9 rebounds a game, and he was very helpful on that perspective. Even shooting 9 for 21, right? Like, I think he was still the Jazz best player today. But big moments came from everybody, right? So Mike Conley rested today, so Colin Sexton got the start. Colin Sexton was very frustrated. He's been very frustrated all season that he's not getting the minutes that he thinks he deserves. He gets 32 minutes in a spot start today for the resting Mike Conley. Nothing's wrong with him. Mike Conley was on the Jazz broadcast today saying that he negotiated this with the team, right? Like, these players want to play, right? They're very cognizant of what rest means, and especially on a tanking team, quote unquote tanking. They're 5-2. I'll talk about that again if you want me to. But he wants to play. But with I think the Jazz schedule coming up, they have very few back-to-back, so they were kind of looking at it as a group and said, like, hey, we can't let you play every back-to-back. This is one that makes sense. You're coming on It's not a road to road back to back where you're just continually pushing it. This is a road to home back to back. Come back, relax, get full recovery. Because guess who we got to play on Monday? The Memphis fucking Grizzlies. And John Morant probably will play in that game. Maybe 50-50. We'll see. We're gonna need Mike Conley to play against John Morant in that one. So Colin Sexton gets the start, and he was Colin Sexton, right? Like a lot of energy. Colin Sexton's defensive fervor is quite high, right? Like, he clearly gives a shit there. I don't quite know if he's good enough yet defensively, but we enjoy watching him out there, right? Just like watching a guy who tries is just night and day different from what we've been used to over the past few years. And he gets lost all the time. He'll commit a dumb foul here and there, but like the effort is clearly really high from him. And he had a couple isolation, decide that he wants to shoot the three. And he did. He was 3 of 6 from 3, 19 points, 4 assists for him, 3 turnovers, all of them really dumb and bad, but no player from Utah is guiltless on the turnover front, from my perspective. So he gets a spot start, was very helpful today. Jordan Clarkson executed the offense great all day, 6 assists. He's averaging a career high, almost 6 assists a game. And he's not playing like this, okay, walk the ball up court playing pure point guard. It's just the ball often doesn't even start with him. He might be the 4th or even 5th guy to touch the ball in some of these possessions. And with 12 seconds left, his role is not to get the ball with 10 seconds left in the shot clock and make something happen, flamethrower. Like, go, you have to bail us out. That was his charge last year. Is to say, hey, if you get the ball with 10 seconds left, we're done. We're giving up. We'll be open for a pass if you want to shoot it if the defense collapses, but this is your show, right? And that's not his charge this year. His charge is you get the ball with 10 seconds left, can you figure out drawing a screen or can you collapse a defense in a creative way that you know where a player is open? And Clarkson he's starting to develop that eyes in the back of his head thing where if he is able to sense where defensive pressure is coming on the weak side to make his layup attempt more difficult or a mid-range shot more difficult. And it's very similar to young quarterbacks in football learning about how to react to certain blitz packages, where if the pressure's coming from this side and the safety's over here and we got man coverage, I know that this guy's wide open and I don't even have to look at him, right? It takes ball handlers years to learn that, of like, I don't see the guy on the weak side pressuring me, but I feel his footsteps, and I know, based on who's been covering me and how they've been rotating the defense, that my weak side corner is open. Or a pass that is normally 3 passes away, completely across the fucking gym. It looks like a dangerous pass. You shouldn't be making it. He knows that based on how the defense is collapsing on him, he knows where the ball needs to be. And that is something we've never seen from Jordan Clarkson. He can make the simple pass. If he's charged to be like, hey, can you run 5 possessions as the point guard? He can run a pick and roll. Like, he's good at normal ball handling stuff, but he's starting to get this weird sense of really like, how is the defense shifting to me? And where does that leave people wide open? A beneficiary of that often today, especially in the fourth quarter, is the hero Kelly Olynyk. 2 big threes at the end, 8 of 10 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. 3 big blocks today. 4 real shitty turnovers today. But it's all right. Olynyk, overall very positive. He definitely had a great day today. Everyone's favorite son, Jared Vanderbilt, 7 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 of 2 from 3. I love that Jared Vanderbilt starts, but I love that especially with Simone Fontecchio out and Rudy Gay out and Mike Conley out today and Walker Kessler still out. Just in case you're not aware, Walker Kessler out with just a regular illness, non-COVID, and Gay and Fontecchio have tested positive for COVID, so they're in COVID protocols. So with the limited front court options, right? I just listed 3 front court options for the Jazz that are out. I love that he reduced Vanderbilt's minutes, and Vanderbilt didn't play as much as he probably normally would, but Hardy wanted to ascribe Vanderbilt on lineups where it would make sense against the Grizzlies that were out there. And so Vanderbilt was kind of like plucked and prodded out of the lineup a little bit, and he ended up with 7 assists out of it. And I think that really helps kind of grow Vanderbilt's game. Love seeing him out there. Also, Vanderbilt committed 4 really dumb turnovers. Might have been a coaching point on that a little bit as well. Overall, this team just... it's full of guys, right? We're going to be thinking about this Jazz team 10 years from now like, oh, remember that guy? Yeah, I remember that guy. That guy was all right. Yeah, that guy was cool. I don't know how many stars are on this team. I think Lauri Markkanen is still... sorry, I keep calling him Lauri Markkanen. It's Lauri Markkanen. I feel really bad that I keep mispronouncing. I hate mispronouncing names. I think Lauri Markkanen is still a dependent threat, right? I don't think he's quite this blue chip star that people are wondering if he can be. 20 points, 23 points a game is great, but as there's a difference between how Desmond Bane is getting his 30 points today and how Lauri Markkanen is getting his 23, right? Like there's a couple possessions where Lowry jacked it up from 3, or he would back a guy down a little bit. He had like a Gordon Hayward type fadeaway J that I thought was very reminiscent of like a Hayward type release where he gets a ton of separation between him and the guy guarding him, and he's got too much length, and it's just an easy shot for him. But largely, like, he's being fed passes or fed advantages, right? Where even if he has to take 2 or 3 dribbles, he's getting the ball on the move, or he's getting the ball where he's not just catching the ball at a standstill and then making something happen. That's just not Markkanen's game. So because Markkanen's still this dependent threat, I don't know how much of a blue chip guy he is, but he's really nailing this dependent threat role really well, right? And it's been great to see. And if he just shoots a little bit better from 3, he's fine. Malik Beasley ended up being huge for the Jazz throughout the game. I've been clamoring for Beasley to be given more opportunities when he's out there to just jack up threes. He's just such a good shooter, and when in the first few games Beasley would be out there with a bench-addled Colin Sexton who wants to make a play, with Talen Horton-Tucker, the most selfish player in the league. I say that tongue-in-cheek. Horton-Tucker's gotten a little bit better these past couple of games, but like his first few games were not exactly promising on the blinders perspective for THT. He's playing with Walker Kessler, who's a rookie, not really knowing what's going on. Some of it, Kessler's got good feel, but he's still a rookie, right? So Beasley, this super dynamic, super threat from distance, not quite Kyle Korver, but like he's a great shooter, right? He averaged 3.5 threes not too long ago, a year or two ago. And today he was given that responsibility, and at the end of the game, he ended up closing the lineup. Again, no Conley, but Beasley closing and playing 32 minutes, I think, is a testament to who he was as a defender. He was a primary defender on Desmond Bane, who was Memphis's best player today. And he was given this charging defensive role and also playing the roamer 3 role with a team with Olynyk and Markkanen and Sexton, and Clarkson especially, who knew where he was going to be and give him the ball. 4-6 from 3 today, and all of his threes were huge. He's been a little cold recently, I think, and it was great to see him get some buckets and have them go in. I'm going to take a drink of this 12%er here. Yeah, we got a mixed Imperial Stout today, conditioned over strawberries and white chocolate, 12%. Pint that I'm heavily enjoying after drinking some 9% Imperial Stouts earlier. So I'm having a great Saturday night. I hope you are as well with this Jazz victory. 5-2 for the Jazz. Running down the players, already talked about the starting lineup a little bit. The surprise performer today, I think, was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who played I'm going to abort my own sentence and remind everyone that when Alexander Walker came into the league, he was known, and his archetype was going to be a 3-and-D combo guard type. Definitely not a point guard, not a distributor, Definitely a long range shooter who had an iffy stroke, but really a great defender. So in New Orleans, Alexander Walker is tasked with playing pure ass point guard, and he was miserable in that role. And so you'd have this guy jacking up off the dribble long twos, off the dribble threes, and just wasn't his game whatsoever. But that's what he was coached at to do for several seasons. And so he just never fit his game, never worked well at all. And the defense suffered because of it, right? Like, and maybe not because of it, but that certainly is, if you're expending that kind of energy offensively, I don't know if you can really turn it around and be that guy defensively. It's a very, very rare person that can do that, but he was also miserable defensively. He came in as a defensive substitution today. They trust him to shoot the three, so he went 2 of 5 from 3 today, but it was his defense that forced many of those 20 turnovers that you're seeing. He's credited with only 2 steals, but he definitely, often what will happen is a player will poke the ball out and somebody else will retrieve the ball, and the player who retrieves the ball is credited with the steal. Alexander Walker's hands were all over the court today, several deflections today. Just a joy to watch defensively, matched up against all sorts of different players for Memphis. Typically Desmond Bane when Malik Beasley wasn't on the court, but also had some possessions against Tyus Jones and Dylan Brooks. Again, not the Jazz defense wasn't like locking guys down, right? But it was more of this awareness of what to do when a blow by happened, and just kind of mucking up the paint and forcing the ball handler to make a tough decision or shoot a mid-range jumper. And so Memphis, when they chose to shoot the mid-range jumper, had a lot of success. They really killed us from the mid-range today. When they were forced to instead, I don't want to shoot this mid-range jumper, I should pass the ball, it was a turnover for the Jazz's benefit. So just a unique defensive performance today. I can't look at Alexander Walker and be like, there's our lockdown guard defender that we've been missing. No, he sucked ass a lot, staying in front of his man a few times. But he also, he would get beat and immediately be like, and this is what we've been missing from the Jazz, right, the past few years. He would get his ass beat off the dribble, and he would immediately think, how can I help instead? Do I trail this guy and try to block a shot? Do I go do something random and cover somebody else and try to double team where I think this guy's vision is and try to get a steal? He just found ways to be like, if I'm going to get beat, the worst thing I can do is just stand around and look aimless, because this doesn't help anybody. Instead, he's like, all right, I got beat. What's going next? And he would just roam around and find some opportunities. Colin Sexton was quite the improviser on defense today. Colin Sexton, whenever he got slammed by his screen, which is common playing against a Steven Adams and Brandon Clark-led offense on the screening perspective, Sexton would just sort of start freelancing shit, and I don't immediately recall how successful it was, but I would just randomly be watching Sexton guard the ball defensively, get screened really hard, and instead of continuing to fight through it and trail the guy, he just started floating around and just mucking shit up. And I don't know how much shit he ended up mucking, but it was curious to watch, and I don't know if that's a coaching point or just a Sexton thing. Sexton is quite the freelancer offensively and defensively. I personally love watching him play. I think he's exactly the kind of piece that you want to see if, like, okay, is he worth that contract that we got in the sign-in trade? I think he absolutely is. He's so young. I think he absolutely is going to evolve into a better version of Jordan Clarkson. I just don't know how much of a pure point guard he's going to be, but I think, like, okay, that can he be Anthony Simons for Portland, right? Like a starting 2 guard that is weak defensively, but you can still trust it, right? So I think he still has a lot of potential, but he definitely causes a lot of ire from the coaching staff, especially from what I saw yesterday. So yesterday I'm sitting right behind the bench, and all I care about is the interactions between everybody. So after seeing the Mitchell Gobert and the Hayward, the Jazz before them, having seen them twice a year, every year in Denver for quite a long time, I kind of got used to like how Quinn Snyder coached, who he talked to, what his assistants did. This was great yesterday to actually see how they reacted to things. And that might be worth its own separate little point or article or podcast on its own. But what I noted was that Colin Sexton led to a lot of assistant coaches like slapping their hands on their knees whenever he would freelance something offensively. I think like Sexton's style of play might not always jive with a coaching staff that's just trying to instill like basic principles on things. So I think Sexton's the feel guy, right? Like he's more of a feeling out the team, like, hey, if I do this cut, like, and if you give it to me, I got a wide open dunk or something like that. And he's super intense, right? So a lot of times if he's feeling something, if he has a great idea about something, it can be a little difficult to say, like, in the moment, like, hey, this is where we should be doing things on this particular play. Trust me, there's a reason for it. So I think he's a great player, and I think it's going to be a fun 82 games, especially as Mike Conley gets rested more and more and more, that we can figure out, like, all right, this is Colin Sexton's first real coach of his NBA career. Right, a good system, and even if the Jazz are going to lose 50 games, it's a good infrastructure, I think, than whatever the fuck was happening in Cleveland. So I'm pretty optimistic to see what we'll get out of 82 games out of Sexton. Ochai Agbaji played his second real game, I should say, real of non-garbage time minutes, and a lot of bad and a little bit of good out of him, right? Like we saw why he was pretty useful. He's got a lot of scrappy defensiveness. 0-2 from 3, good looks. His form looked fine. So, if he hits a couple of those threes, they would look better. He was on the wrong end of some of Memphis's biggest runs. I think they had a 16-1 and 17-2 runs at some point, and I think he was involved in both of them. He ends up a team low -12. But I don't necessarily think he was the reason for a lot of that. He was 2 of 6 from the field, so he was 2 of 4 otherwise from the field. He missed a couple easy buckets, I think. He was fine. Like, there's just nothing super impressive. He had a dunk that grazed the rim, right? And his dunk yesterday kind of just barely got over there. We see him in college do these giant alley-oops where he jumps out of the gym but those were off of set plays, expected things, and he's really just corking up his body, and it takes him forever to do these huge jumps. In the NBA, it's got to be a lot faster than that, right? And the reason Donovan Mitchell's athleticism was almost underrated coming into the NBA was because, like, and you see Donovan's dunks now in Cleveland, right? Like, he's still, like, the ball's getting over the rim, kind of barely, but he's up on the rim almost immediately. Like, he's and I think Abaji's vertical abilities are a little bit slower and take a little bit longer to cork up. And I'm not sure where his lateral athleticism is at. I think his speed is good, but he's also a young kid, right? So I would expect his speed to be fine. I think we got a lot to see out of Ochai this year, but the fact that we're trusting him over Bolmaro, to play some minutes, I think is notable. Especially yesterday, he got off the bench before Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Alexander-Walker only played in garbage time yesterday against the Nuggets. And I think it was notable that in both situations, today and yesterday, that Agbaji has got enough trust from the coaching staff to say, hey, go out there and make some mistakes. We know here's what I know you can do. So pretty promising, I think, for him overall, but I think we have a long ways to go before we can say, like, Agbaji's a good, solid 3-and-D starter type player. He's a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And for as long as he stayed in college and how successful his last year of college was, winning the Tournament Player of the Year for Kansas, and I know Cleveland would have expected this if they still had him on their team. They would have expected Agbaji to be their starting 3 immediately over Isaac Okoro, who sucks, over Karis LeVert, who's a defensive nightmare alongside, with or without Garland and Mitchell being their starting backcourt, and Dean Wade, who is actually, I think, their best option, but is actually kind of bigger and suits more as like a 3-4. And so Dean Wade, I think he's probably their best option at starting 3, but, like, it's Dean fucking Wade. Like, okay. Like, they would have expected Agbaji to start immediately over those guys and Chetty Osman. And I think they would have been disappointed immediately. if Agbaji had to start for them. And Utah, I know a lot of fans are probably looking like, hey, Agbaji, why isn't he getting 30 minutes? He should be getting Malik Beasley's minutes. He should be getting, if Jerry Vanderbilt's having a bad game, he should be getting Vanderbilt's minutes. And I think the guy just makes a lot of mistakes and isn't quite ready to be that level of shooter that we need for a guy who's going to make those mistakes defensively. He's a rookie. It's fine. I'm not sounding alarms over here, but he's got a little ways to go. That's who played today. Interesting players for Memphis. Obviously, John Morant didn't play today, so Tyus Jones, of course, as one would expect, completely lit us up. Like I said, he was letting Utah up from the mid-range. He went 3 of 5 from 3. 2 of those threes, he was just left completely wide open by a transition defense that forgot he existed. And he only had 1 turnover today. Tyus Jones was Memphis's best overall player. He got abused defensively a little bit today. But Desmond Bane, with his 32 points, he had 5 really bad turnovers, including 1 really bad one at the end of the game. Desmond Bane finishes a -8 today. And Dylan Brooks, as usual, against the Jazz, completely kicked our ass. +9 in only 29 minutes today. But he had 5 fouls, and he had to kind of come in and out of the lineup because Dylan Brooks just cannot keep his hands off people. And so that was an interesting experience, of course, playing Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, and Tyus Jones, 3 guys that are just really annoying for the Jazz to play against all the time. Really frustrating. So, that's kind of the story of today. Up and down game, wild swings, 11-2 runs going one way, 17-2 runs going the other way. The Jazz going mark to mark towards the end, hitting big threes to match up against tough shots by Memphis. The defense was kind of bad, but they forced a lot of frenetic energy to force Memphis into 20 turnovers to mitigate Utah's 19 turnovers of their own. The Jazz finally get out of the fucking basement from 3. They shoot 43% from 3 on 44 attempts. It was great. Real balanced offensive attack. No number one hero to point to. Solid marketing all game. Clarkson running the offense really well, especially without Mike Conley. And Olynyk hitting giant shots at the end. To the tune of 23 points for Olynyk. And Sexton with 19 points in a spot start for Conley is really the story here. We're playing Memphis again on Monday. These guys will absolutely take it to us on Monday. I believe that game is at home again, so Utah gets to sleep in their own bed. Utah has not had consistent nights at home at all this season. This will be their first second night in a row at home. So this will be very helpful for them. And that's all we got, I think, for the Salt City Hoops postcast, unless anyone wants to drop in a comment or say hello on the spaces here. Got some folks here in both places, and I'll take a couple sips of beer if anyone wants to think about anything they want to say. Forgot that we had we can look at comments now on spaces. And so I missed that Jazz Kid Ball commented about 20 minutes ago on Vanderbilt and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and some things. Sorry, I forgot we had comments on this. But if anyone wants to drop anything, I'll stick around for a bit as I finish this beer here. I'm not going to finish this 12%er here right now. It's still got a pretty full glass because I've been nonstop talking, but I'll pause for a minute. Jazz are in Denver again on December 10th, so I'll take my seats back, see what new things I can learn. Hopefully we still have a winning record. Well, if y'all are comfortable with just listening to me talk, I think I've said all I need to do about the Jazz winning today. I'm thrilled y'all tune in for the Utah Jazz Salt City Hoops live postcast after I've had several beers and enjoying Saturday night here. Jazz again at home on Monday, Halloween night. I hope you all have a great night. And we'll see you again Monday night talking about the Jazz again, hopefully after another win. All right, y'all. Good night.